Hi, I'm Gordon Burkell from Filmmaker U. At Filmmaker U, we create courses for film professionals to deepen and diversify your existing skill set. You can learn more at filmmakeru.com. And of course, check us out on Twitter at filmmaker_u, and go to our YouTube channel and hit the subscribe button and check the notification bell for our weekly videos. Every week, we interview a film professional to discuss their work, and this is made possible by our sponsors, OWC. For more information on how they can assist you in your filmmaking needs, go to owcdigital.com. And this week, I'm joined by Kira Kelly, ASC, the DOP for the documentary 13th, Insecure, and the new show, Why the Last Man. Welcome to the show, Kira.
Hi, thank you.
Now, you've also done a lot of commercial work in terms of cinematography. How do you approach commercials differently than, say, a feature film or a TV show?
Well, it's interesting. Commercials are, most of my career has been mainly like long form stuff, whether it's like television or features. And it's just been kind of recent that commercials have become a bigger part of my my career. And what's interesting about them is, like, with television and movies, like you get prep time with the director. You get to go in and like really plan out shots. By the time a DP comes in a commercial, the shots have already been approved by the agency and planned out, and so it's just about like making it happen. And what's cool about the commercials also is that you really get a chance to, like, it's a very short amount of time. You get to work with a new director. You get to work with new gear and kind of play with some toys that might not be the right ones for like movies or your shows, but are fun to play with in the commercial space.
Are you given more, or like, because you said that things are planned out, are you allowed to be a part of that planning process in terms of like framing and what have you, or is it all pre-done and you come on and...
I think it's pretty like subtlety as far as like composition and things like that, then yes, I can definitely be a part of. But as far as like, we need to show this in this frame, and like, it's almost pre-edited, you know what I mean? As far as the storyboards are pretty specific. However, yeah, there is a way that, through lighting and through composition, there are ways to kind of make it your own and, be a part of the creative team.
Mm-hmm. Now, you as I mentioned, you were part of the documentary 13th with Ava DuVernay. How did you get involved with her? What was your working relationship process like?
Yeah, so I of course knew who Ava was, but well before the 13th, and it's kind of where social media played a role. It's like we ended up like following each other on social media for a while, and then one day I got like an email from her assistant saying, Ava would like to meet with you. She's like, of course. So we ended up meeting at a Pinkberry and had frozen yogurt. And it was it was just like very chill and wonderful meeting, just kind of getting to know somebody. And, she was saying how she had this documentary that she was working on called 13th. And would I be interested in DPing it? And at that point, there were two of us. It was myself and Hans Charles was the other DP on the show. And we were able to really kind of figure out a look for the show that for the movie that Ava wanted. And I think for her, the most important thing was not to have like this cut to traditional talking head where they're on the on like the appropriate side of frame and everything, like we all know the documentary setup, and so for her, she really wanted it to be visually the interview setups actually say something visually. And so a big part of that too was like the locations. Like she had a location scout that found these incredible places that really became part of the look of the documentary. Like when we shot Angela Davis, we were in Oakland at this old train station, and it's just beautiful, beautiful place. It's kind of falling apart in like a beautiful patina sort of way. So we knew that we wanted to have that be part of the frame. So for Angela Davis, for example, it's like putting her like, she's royalty and like putting her like in the middle of the seat with all this space around her, and really kind of gave her a bit of weight that I was happy to be able to play with. And it was something where Ava was always kind of pushing us about frames and like, how can we, how can we push ourselves artistically? And with that film, it's like, I think usually with documentaries, you know, you get the job, you might go out and shoot a bunch of interviews, and then it's like you inevitably have the B-roll days where you go and shoot a bunch of B-roll to like support the edit, so that, you know, if somebody's talking, you've got some footage to look at underneath. And I remember, you know, once we finished all these interviews, I was like, okay, when are we going to do some B-roll stuff? And she was like, oh no, we're not going to do B-roll in this one. And I just remember thinking, oh, B-roll, sure. what is a documentary without that? And then I just saw, like, of course she didn't need any B-roll, because they had these gorgeous, like, gorgeous graphics that they created, and also the archival footage itself was the B-roll. And really just like, I don't know, I think that the work that she did on that film is just incredible. And to this day, I mean, I you know, when I'm retired and done with my career, that the 13th will always be like top 5 easily, maybe top 3, maybe top.
Well,
just
it's
as
such an
far as
important
like
film, right?
yeah, just as far as subject matter and what it meant, what it continues to mean today. And yeah, it was really I think, well, as I was shooting it, here and there I got glimpses of how incredible and how important it would end up being, but I couldn't have at the time, I couldn't have even imagined how big it is.
And do you, when you're working with a director like Ava, do you put together a lookbook for a project like that, or how do you get on the same page visually?
Usually, I think usually there is a lookbook involved. I think we did a lot of you know, talking about what it should be, and then it was like we had a bit of time, like we had a bit of time on set where we kind of would find the space and find where the interview would be, and kind of, it was one of those things where we were finding the language as we were going with it. And you know, it was great. Like, she's an incredible collaborator, because she has a very, I mean, she knows what she wants. She goes in, she can tell you like, this is what I want, but in the same breath, she's able to say, but what do you think? Which is like a really, it's subtle, but it's such an important part of like being a director. And I take that with myself as being a director of photography. Like, I can tell my crew, this is what I want. This is how I'd like it to be. What do you think? Like, how do you know that your crew is there to support you and help you in your vision? And sometimes it could be like, well, Kira, you know, we could do it that way, but it's going to be this much extra, you know, crew members. There's going to be this much extra equipment. We could get a similar thing if we did it like this. And so it's always like this really, I mean, I think that's the best part of filmmaking, is the collaboration. It's like, it is a collaborative art form for sure.
Now, sort of in that same lookbook vein question, one of the things I like to talk to cinematographers about is where do they go for inspiration? So like, is there a photographer, artist, or who do you look to for your inspiration?
Well, this is it's so funny now with lookbooks. It's like any job, like before you get the script, and then it's just like, okay, I need to make a lookbook, because that's how now it's like getting jobs. It's you before, it's oftentimes you're making a lookbook before you even met the director. You just have the script and then what you can kind of envision. And so it's funny, I'm moving right now, so I've got my office is a wreck, and I've got my books are the next thing to get packed, but they're all over. But yeah, I always like, I love Arcana bookstore here in Culver City. And I just go there, and like, you sit and you look at books, you buy the books. And then what I find out do is, like, you know, once I like go through some a still photographer's book, you can usually find that image online. And then I have like a whole folder full of visual references from specific photographers, or also from movies, that I use as part of building my lookbooks. And it's like, you know, things like, you know, Shot Deck, what Larry Shear's done with Shot Deck right now is pretty amazing. There's another one too that's escaping me. That's also a great resource for finding film stills. And I just always, like, whenever I see an image, it's like, whether it's just like online or just like something from a movie, I always go back and try to put it into my my folder of collection, because you just never know. And I do say, like, you know, for example, Todd Hido is like, he's one of my favorites. Yeah, he's right here. I'm really just moving, so it's kind of but he's beautiful. Like, look at this. Wow. Like, beautiful photographer. He inevitably, there's always one Todd Hido book in picture in my lookbooks. So yeah, it's just kind of like he's a big one. Rinko Kawauchi is also beautiful. She's got these like beautiful pastel colors. And I think that with the lookbook, it's like the one place where I don't think that the expectation from a producer or a director is like, okay, they're going to nail the look. This is what the look is going to be. It's not like a test. It's more of just like we were talking about earlier, that collaboration of just like, this is what I see visually, you know, what do you think? And I think that kind of leads to, you know, let's say you get the job, it leads to one of my favorite parts of a project, which is prep, which is kind of like, you know, sitting back and forth with with a director and being like, okay, look at this image for composition, not lighting, or look at this one for lighting, but not camera movement, like really sort of zeroing down on what the visual language of that film will be.
Interesting. Now I want to jump to Why the Last Man, because I'm excited for that because I read the comic.
Yeah.
So are you?
Yeah.
How did you prepare for that? Did you read the comic? How did you get on board for that?
So I have been preparing for Why since 2002 when it first came out. So I have every issue. I bought them as they came out.
Oh wow!
Show you this here because this is also an office. This is like an office tour, but it's like number one. I brought this with me to Toronto, hoping that Brian K. Vaughan might be able to come to set to sign it, but you know, we were in quarantine and nobody could come. So yeah, I collected them. You know, I would go to Midtown Comics, and that was my, you know, I would buy them the whole run. Like I have all 60, and all throughout my career, I've always kind of watched it. Like at one point, it was supposed to be, I think Tom Cruise was supposed to be attached to it. Like there were all these different, there were all these different, like, you know, why conversations. And each time I would tell my agents, like, you know, I want to, I don't, it was something I always tracked. And then last year, no, not last year, it was 2019, I got called in to interview for it. And so I talked to the showrunner, Eli Clark, and you know, she was just amazing. She could kind of tell, she of course could tell that I was a big fan, but I love the fact that like how much she was going with what the story was, but then also updating it and really making it like something that, you know, is happening now. It's like it's been 20 years. So it was like one of those things where it's just like, it's, you know, I think in this world, in this, you know, as a DP, it's like, you know, you have dream jobs and like grail jobs maybe. And this is always why being on Why the Last Man has always been a part of that, because it's just like, I just love this story. I think it's so incredible. So actually having gotten the job was pretty wonderful. And so we started, like, I remember I got to Toronto March of 2020. I got there on Monday. I get into my office. By Wednesday, Tom Hanks had COVID. Yeah. And by Friday, I was packing my stuff and on a flight back to LA because everything just kind of shut down. So it was like, we're making this show about like half of the population dying like during a pandemic. And what we did was like, we just kind of like between me, the other alternating DP, Catherine Lutz, and then, you know, our director, Louise Friedberg, our production designer, our costume designer, the producers, we all just kind of stayed in touch. Like, and we started this thing called like the Why the Last Man movie club. I mean, it was during COVID and we were all just kind of like at home. We're like, why don't we all watch movies together and talk about it via Zoom as part of like this prep process? So like we watched like Zero Dark 30, we watched Children of Men, I think We're Alone Now, Disclosure, that Netflix documentary. Like we watched a bunch of stuff that really kind of helped us. Like it was this extended prep and creative process that we wouldn't have had on any other job. So it was something that was really great. If you can say anything, it's great because of COVID. But then in the fall, in September of 2020, we went back to Toronto and did the pilot. And it was a great experience. It was really great. And then we you know, they since finished the series. So
I'm in Toronto, so I wish I had known.
Oh, really?
Yeah. What was it like shooting during COVID? Like how did it impact you?
Yeah, it was so many different ways. I mean, I think that for It was interesting because it was, in September, it was really bad in LA. And so I was really excited to go to Toronto and be there. It felt a little safer. I brought my family with me. It was testing 3 times a week. We had the new, the dividing up the zones, whether zone A, zone B, zone C. It was different, even to the degree of location scouting. Like usually location scouting, everybody gets into one van, you start talking about ideas, you go from one location to the other. This was like a caravan of people self-driving, because it got down to like, I couldn't be in the same vehicle as the director, because if we both got it, then it was always this like thing of like, part of the contact tracing is like how to keep the show going at all costs. So if suddenly the director and the DP are out, it's like, do you shut down? Like, it's like, it was this thing of like trying to collaborate, but then also just being as safe and far away as possible from each other. But you definitely figure it out. Like, I think the hardest thing was trying to the DIT tent. It was always like, I remember the poor COVID people would come and be like, can you guys stand a little further apart? But it's just like, you're looking at the same monitor, and we're trying to like not have a tent, and but you end up figuring it out. It's I don't know. I think more than anything, everybody wanted to keep working and keep going. So it was just like, if this means that, we would have to wear the face masks and the face shields if we were near the actors, then that's what we do to kind of keep working. I know costume department, they had to figure out a whole new setup. It's just like, it's a whole new world, which even now I feel like some of those same precautions, unfortunately, maybe are dying down a little bit, but I feel like, the mask wearing is going to stay on set for a bit, even with vaccines, I'm sure.
Now, how did you get on? So, because it's not out yet. Why?
Yeah.
So I guess with what you're allowed to tell me about it, how did you guys like develop the look for the series?
Yeah. So this is where we worked with Louise Friedberg, the director. She directed the pilot, and then also episode number 2. And I shot the pilot, and then Catherine shot she shot all the even ones. So she shot number 2. And so what we really, it was such a fun way to think about it. It's like Louise's whole goal was to think of, everything is like, pre-event and post-event, right? We'll call the event when every mammal with a Y chromosome dies, right? Except for this one guy. So Louise really wanted to play with this, visual language of like excess and opulence. And like, we had this party scene where it was just like, every light in the house should be on. We should be burning through electricity. We should be burning through resources. There's just like a shot of food being thrown away and wasted, because we're setting us up for this time where it's like, the electricity all goes down. Most of the world's truckers are men. So now it's like they're all dead and all the food shortage is gone. All the food is gone. So we really wanted to kind of set up this world that we kind of were living in. It's almost something you think about, like even pre-pandemic, of just like having everything you want on any whim, and really sort of, so like visually, it kind of went from like a lot of brightness, not brightness, but like a lot of like, things on in the room, to like darkness, you know what I mean? Like you're running out of electricity, or we were then like post-event sourcing with like flashlights or lanterns. And we really we shot on the Alexa Mini LF, and our main lenses were the G series from Panavision. And but we found we had this gorgeous one lens called the MAP55. It's an anamorphic, we shot the show anamorphic. It's this anamorphic macro lens, and the best way I can describe it is just messy. It's beautifully messy. Like it has these, like, it's super, it lacks contrast. It's super soft. Like whenever we would shoot it wide open, the AC was just like, this is, he could totally pull on it wide open, but he's like, it's not resolving, meaning that there's like such a narrow window within the frame of even, it wasn't focusing on anything.
Yeah.
And sometimes we were like, that's beautiful. Well, we will go with that. So that was the main lens after event, right? Yeah. So like I can guarantee you, like between me and Catherine, and then Claudine, who took over for me after, every A camera shot that you see in the show, post event on, had the MAP 55 on it. It's just like we wanted to have the visuals of the show, like we really pushed into imperfection, like this idea of like, half the world's population is gone. How do you fix that? How do you deal with all that trauma? And then how do you deal with like the basics of like, we're talking about food, electricity, and all that. We really wanted the image to break down a lot. And so that became our main lens. And then before event, I was mainly on the 60 mil G series lens, which is just beautiful. And then also something that we worked in collaboration with, hair and makeup department, was that and the actresses were all in, like, once the event happened, there was no makeup. I mean, super subtle, no makeup look, but they had, they would come with their, very natural, like, under their eyes, gorgeous, but still like, they didn't spend an hour in the chair. It was just like, okay, here they are, she didn't sleep much last night. Nobody's sleeping right now. This is fine. There was no eyebrow waxing, nails were done. They had their roots growing out. Like the actresses were incredible. It was really, we just kind of wanted to play with this world as in like, as real and imperfect as possible visually.
And was there like specific looks for specific characters or anything like that? Like,
no, not really. No, I think it was kind of like we kind of kept it as like, in the pilot you have before the world before, and then as the event happens, it all kind of falls apart. Something that there was a different look, if you can look at it this way, like the Pentagon. A good portion of our story happens in the Pentagon. The Pentagon does have emergency generators and did have electricity, but we kind of played it as maybe instead of like in the first one when all the lights are on, maybe they go to like emergency backup power, so it's a little darker. The Pentagon, people at the Pentagon have food. So in that sort of world, that was shot a little differently because we were still using, like, we were able to use lamps, we were able to use like overhead lighting and things like that. But then once we got out, like, once Yorick and then the other characters who are not in the Pentagon get out, it's all about like, a lot of flashlights. It's about a lot of darkness. And for me, it was really exciting because creatively, I've never done a post-apocalyptic piece, and I haven't really gotten to play with before this sort of darkness and moodiness that I was able to do with Wyatt, which I'm really excited about.
Is there a particular scene or moment that you can tell us about that was difficult but you're really proud of in terms of the way it looks?
Yeah, that's a good question. Hold on, I'm gonna think for a moment. Well, there's several. I think for me, like we get into, I remember this this one location. So actually, you probably know it, but I forget where it is in Toronto. But there's this one location where our characters are supposed to meet a pretty major character. Well, yeah, I guess I can say, well, maybe I shouldn't say. But you're supposed to meet a pretty major character on their way through their journey. And so it was like, we really, she's hiding out in this like Boston club. And she's only using, she's using this like, sorry, I'm gonna start over. She's hiding out in this like men's club. It's like this Boston Union Club or something. And so what happens is like she's using all of these like, old lanterns and stuff and fireplace to light this space. And the idea was that she had glued the curtains together to keep keep people on the outside from seeing that she was living there. Because at that point, like, if people see that you have something, they were going to try to take it forcibly, because now we're post-apocalyptic.
Like toilet paper at the start of our pandemic.
Exactly. Yes. They have toilet paper. I'm going to go steal it from them. So what we did in that space, it was like just this challenge of like, first of all, I think I got in my head a little too much, because we had this thing of like the only place that has electricity is the Pentagon. And we wanted to make that clear. But then I was just like, okay, she's lit this space with oil lamps. How do we make it over, super clear to the audience that these lamps are oil lamps and not, not electric ones? And so it was really about like, okay, like I suggested to the director, let's do like a push in on oil lamp. However, because of the sensibilities of the location, I couldn't light the whole thing with just oil lamps. It would have, it's fire, it's all this stuff, right? So it was like really trying to work with the set deck department and trying to find like, okay, we'll get one real oil burning lamp that we can do this close up on, and then the other ones will be all like ones that my that set deck and my gaffer work together on running power to, and having those be electric and on our dimmer board. But it was really like that location was one where, again, I think maybe I got in my head about it too much, but just making sure that it's like you get this glow from the windows, but then also most of the light is coming from not only these oil lamps, but also the fireplace. And so there's a lot of darkness in the space, but then this fight happens, and just trying to like have that be broader there. I think also another place is like, in the Pentagon, we have the president's quarters. In episode 3, we have like, it's where one of our main characters is kind of hiding out. And so I remember when I first read the script, I was just like, oh my gosh, we're 17 pages in this one room. And I, again, got in my head about it. I was like, how do I make this look different? And it was really such a fun challenge to be able to like we're spending one day in this room and really sort of track it was on stage. But really sort of track exactly where the sun was. Okay, this time is pre-dawn, so there's no direct sun, it's just blue from the windows. And then now the sun has come up just a little bit, and so for this scene we have a little bit here. And then like I kind of made my own little sun path of what the sun would be doing on that stage. And I think it's kind of like things like that when, I think a lot of people, what happens on stage is that you get to this place that you've been to and you're just like, oh my gosh, this room again, like how can I make this interesting for myself so I can make it interesting for the audience? And it's like, as much as I can, I like to try to have this stage play, like in my mind, be as like much of a realistic place as possible. I could say a lot of
Whatever, as long as you don't get yourself into trouble.
I won't. There's one more thing too, where we had this one of our major 3 characters ends up going to this house looking for someone. It was this great house, like God, where was it? It begins with an O, north of Toronto.
North of Toronto.
Oswego? No, I'm gonna butcher some.
Okay.
Don't worry about it. It was yeah, it was even north of Oshawa. It was like way out there by the lake. And so it's like this gorgeous, really beautiful Victorian house. And so again, like, somebody is hiding out in that house. And so they've got like everything all, all the windows are supposed to be all boarded up and bricked up. But then in a world where there's no electricity, and you're like, we depend on window light and all that, suddenly I'm in a house where all the, all of the windows are boarded up. So we kind of like, I work closely with our production designer, Alexandra Schaller, and her set deck team to find like the perfect balance between like having them boarded up, but then maybe the tops have cracks or something like that, so you can get some shafts of light coming in. And I think that was like, that was one of the most challenging and exciting parts about this job, of like, you're lighting a world without electricity. And so it's like, how much work can this little lamp do, or how much work can this window source do? And it was cool.
Now I have one last question that I ask everyone. Sure. I've been interviewing during the pandemic. We've been stuck inside, and we're going into a 4th wave by the looks of it, and people are going to be stuck inside. Is there a show or a movie discovered on streaming service that people should check out?
Oh, I'm sure people have like so many at this point. This is a more recent one. Well, no, I guess it came out season 1 was during the pandemic. I mean, I'm a sucker for Ted Lasso. I think
it's such a great show. Are you watching the new season?
I'm watching the new season. I think it just came out at a time where, I can't speak for anybody else but myself, but it was hard, like it was like a
dark
really
time, and then all of a sudden
dark time. And it's so lovely, and really like it really was wonderful. So I loved Ted Lasso. I still do. What else did we get into? We got into well, you know what I did this year is so when I went back to shoot episodes 3 and 5, I had to quarantine again.
Mm-hmm.
And my quarantine was right during Sundance. And this year Sundance was all virtual. It was incredible. It's kind of like one of those things where you just like, you know, you can watch as many films as you like. It was almost like at first it was like almost like a stressful thing of like, I need to watch them all. I just paid for this, but it was pretty wonderful. I hope that, well, who knows where we'll be in January, but I hope they have that. If we do go back in person, I hope that they do the online option again, because I think a lot of people got to watch a lot of great movies that they wouldn't have been able to otherwise.
Yeah.
And then lastly, I've been loving, we're watching Lupin, that Netflix French show. And then most recently, Reservation Dogs, I think is pretty wonderful.
Oh, I haven't seen that one. What's that one about?
It's on Hulu. It's a really great show about these 4 kids on the reservation and these teenagers, and it's wonderful.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for letting me interview you.
Yeah, I hope I didn't say too much.
No, it's great. And that's our show for this week. Make sure to check out filmmakeru.com for our latest courses. And of course, follow us on Twitter at filmmaker_you. I'd like to thank again Kira for joining us. And of course, our sponsors, OWC. Go to OWC Digital for all your filmmaking and computer needs. I'm Gordon Burkell. Thanks for watching.